Today I'm reviewing the EKSA M600 gaming mouse. Now let's start off with the shape. EKSA don't have the dimensions of this mouse listed anywhere on their website from what I can see. I measured it at roughly 130mm long, 65mm wide and 40mm tall. The mouse weighs, in EKSA's own words, a super light 90 grams, and I'll point this out just in case they are watching. This is not a super lightweight mouse, this is maybe at best a lightweight mouse, and that is at a stretch. So with the shape here, you're getting a right-handed ergonomic design that looks like someone bred a Roccat cone and a Logitech G502 together. The shape is pretty nice, sitting nice and snug against my palm and causing no discomfort after a long duration. All of my fingers have a nice resting point, and the thumb rest on the side is unobtrusive compared to some of the others that I've used which have one of these. It should be okay for all grip types, however those with a claw grip might find that the base of the mouse pushes a bit too much into their palm. Overall the shape is alright, it's comfortable. I never really had an issue with having to adjust my grip or anything similar. The coating here is a slightly more coarse matte texture, which is actually pretty decent as well. It's comfortable after a long duration of use with hardly any sweat buildup or stickiness to it. On the sides you do have a grip texture, which is just obviously texturized plastic. Compared to some of the others I've used, this is actually not annoying or distracting at all, so it's alright. Before I get onto the buttons and switches though, I'll talk a little bit about the quality. The mouse at first felt quite well made, however after a few hours of use the mouse started to get a bit creaky in areas. Giving it a squeeze in different locations caused the bone-chilling rubbing plastic, which makes me want to roll up into a ball and die. Not only that, but there's also another squeak coming from the mouse 2 button somewhere. Even though you don't feel it physically in the buttons and switches, you can hear it ever so slightly, so it is very annoying. For the switches, they use the TTC Gold micro switches. These feel fine and are rated for up to 20 million clicks. I have no problems with them at all. As mentioned before, the buttons are a little bit squeaky, which is just not acceptable. If they weren't though, they'd be pretty decent because there's very little pre to post travel on the button at all, and I could only really make it double click maybe once in 100 clicks. So it's a bit of a shame that there's a letdown in quality here. The side buttons are quite good. They're in a good placement where they aren't in the way but are easily reachable with a roll of the thumb. Now you get a sniper button. The purpose of this button is to lower your DPI so you can shoot heads better. It's on by default, so naturally I somewhat ignored this feature completely and was confused as to why my sensitivity kept changing whilst playing. Well, this is the reason why. I mean, it's alright, I don't ever use these buttons as I think they're more distracting than anything, but it works. EKSA also has a nice demonstration of what the sniper button does on their product page. It quite simply makes the person you're trying to shoot less blurry. Along with this, you get DPI buttons below the scroll wheel, which scroll through the DPIs going up and down. The scroll wheel is okay, it is a bit loose and rattly, so it's not the best quality. It functions as expected, but the iffy quality does set it back a lot. The mouse 3-click is actually quite decent though, so again it's like half good, half bad. The notches are also pretty fine as it's still stiff, but it's very easy to scroll through them despite this. And the last button is at the bottom, which controls the light. But now for one of the real downfalls of this mouse, the mouse feet. They are so bad that I'm not sure that they even exist. It's so raw and feels so awful it's painful to use. I put a PTFE pad over the bottom one just so then I could actually use it in game without tearing what's remaining of my hair out, and it's then actually usable. Without this it really did feel like it was causing me physical pain while trying to use it. If I continue to use it without the spare feet, I'm very sure that eventually it would scrape into my mouse pad and eventually wear it down, and maybe, who knows, over time it could eventually bore to the centre of the earth. Anyway, this was a very notable issue straight away, which was disappointing to see. It's a shame because the feet are well sized and well placed, which would give it a good amount of balance to the mouse, if they were. For the cable, it's a pretty light braided one. It's decent. It's not the best though, as it still is a bit rigid and has a few kinks in them. The housing at the entry point is quite flexible as well though, so it's quite easy to have it pointing up, so there's less dragging on the mouse pad straight away. For the software, it's pretty feature filled. You are somewhat overwhelmed with all the macros and binds that you can apply to the mouse's 8 programmable buttons. You can also change the light settings, sensitivities, polling rates and apply macros. Fortunately as well, you can unbind the sniper button or program it to something else. But there is another section on this software, one that piqued my interest. It's quite simply called Gun. What does Gun do? Well, I asked EKSA and they responded. I consulted our engineer and he said it's designed for setting the amount of bullet for every shoot during the gameplay. The proposed value is 3 to 5. Let me know if you need more information. Now this somewhat makes a bit of sense just from looking at this page. You press the gun button and maybe in theory it will repeat a mouse one click for X amount of times with a delay in between them. So if there's a weapon that shoots as fast as you can click, then that would probably be its purpose. But the other part is the X and Y axis section. This leads me to believe that maybe this part is used for compensating recoil for each shot. Now a heads up, this kind of stuff could get you banned from various games if that is the software's intention, so I wouldn't use it. Most anti-cheats can detect this sort of stuff, as sending inputs at exact milliseconds is obviously not very human-like. So I tried to use it. I set the sniper button to now use gun. Upon using the gun though, it would just fire once and only once. There have also been occasions when trying to use the gun, the mouse would immediately disconnect along with all the other USB peripherals plugged into my PC. Includes my webcam, my keyboard, my microphone, the whole lot. Anything that was plugged into my computer by USB would brick. I'd then have to unplug and replug everything back in. So yeah, not so good. For the sensor, you're getting a Pixar 3327 sensor, which isn't a high range one at all, but honestly it does the job. It can be set up to 1000 Hz, on which the default is 500 for this mouse. It is acceptable, I think it's usable for most users. Maybe some of the more enthusiasts might find that it could skip or just not feel very smooth, but honestly for the average person it will be more than fine. So in game it's been okay, performance wise it's acceptable. I've had it on about 1000 DPI in Apex Legends and Dota 2, and it's kept up with my sick gamer frags with no problems. But the downside of the in-game use is more the quality side of things. Because there's a few things that make this mouse very distracting, it's very frustrating to use. Mice are best when you are not really aware that they're in your hand. You don't have to adjust your grip, you don't feel anything off. But this one, it's just constantly squeaking and fidgeting. I'd be moving around in a fight and it would just start to squeak and creak, and it would just take my mind straight out of the game. There'd be moments when literally every button press would make a squeak for like 10 seconds at points. So in that regard, if it was a mouse that was better quality, I probably would enjoy using it a lot more. So for the cost of this mouse, it's pretty cheap, sitting at around about $25, £20 or €25 at the time of this review. So it's on the cheaper side of things, and it's targeted to be an affordable gaming mouse. So should you buy it? No, I wouldn't recommend it. There is a good mouse here somewhere. I like the shape and coating, and the buttons and switches are actually pretty good when they aren't creaking. But there's just too many pitfalls that really start to collectively drag the mouse down more and more. The scroll wheel being a bit loose, the mouse feet being somewhat non-existent. It's a shame really. As I said, there's a good mouse in here somewhere, but it really just lacks in the quality department too much for it to be worth picking up.